Let's get ready to rumble!
Hello and welcome to Netflix vs. Cinema, the podcast that is now and truly international. I mean, the other week we were talking about how we were nearly international because I am Tosin, I am the host. I am coming to you from the middle of the UK, a place called Bromsgrove. And Sharon was joining us on the Isle of Wight. Hi, Sharon.
Hello.
And Shaun was joining us that week from Bournemouth. So we were joking that we're almost international. But now Shaun has gone the whole hog. And he has decided, you know what, we're going to make this thing properly international. Shaun, say hi to the people and tell us where you are speaking to us from right now. And typically, we've just lost Shaun.
Yes, well, I'm speaking from good old sunny Thailand, nice and warm. So I'm in my hotel room, and so the internet's a bit up and down. So I might come in, I might go out, I might whatever. So, but yeah, I'm doing all right. So I'm in Thailand. The next time the internet should be better, and I can show you a bit of scenery.
Okay, and also, but part of the reason why Shaun cannot show us any of the scenery is because it is now 1 o'clock in the morning in Thailand. So
1 o'clock in the morning, yeah.
It's 1 o'clock in the morning in Thailand. So after me taking us exotic and recording in exotic locations like my car and a bar in Birmingham, Shaun decided, you know what? I one up everybody in the number of films I see each week. You know, I'm going to one up everybody in locations I record this from. I'm going to be in like my poolside hotel room, which I'm confined to in Thailand. So yes, thanks, Shaun. But no, Shaun, great effort to actually come here, and we'll see how it works. We'll see if you stay long enough for us to actually find what you think about films. But
I think Toast.
Yep.
I think I might have to put my pen in another time. Bye for now.
That's right. Okay, so yes, Shaun kind of joining us from Thailand. We'll see how this works out in the edit. It's going to be a long edit for me to try and put everything in and put Shaun in afterwards. But this week, we are going to be talking finally about Eternals. Eternals, which is the next big Marvel movie that's been released. Which also means that in typical Marvel fashion, we can expect that there will be nothing else released for the next couple of weeks. We're not going to see much else in the cinemas the next couple of weeks because everybody's going to be running scared because, oh my God, Marvel released a film. So, Sharon, you said you haven't seen the Eternals yet.
No, I haven't. Circumstances have not allowed me to see much at the cinema at all for the last few weeks. But it's on my watch list. I just haven't got there yet.
No, but I remember when cinema came back, and remember when we were first crying about the fact that we didn't have cinema, we're longing for cinema to come back. We were, oh, please bring cinema. We're tearing our clothes, begging for cinema to come back. And then cinema came back, and then we started realizing, you actually have to make time for it, and you have to figure out how your life fits in with timings at the cinema. And at home, you can just go, well, I go 5 minutes, I'll catch up 5 minutes on that thing. Because circumstances almost didn't allow me to see any. I've hardly seen anything in the last 2 weeks because of life and kids. And my kids started going to nursery and figuring out this whole thing because my wife's going back to work. And I'm like, oh, wow. Sometimes it's actually, I managed to go to see the Eternals, and it was literally the only thing I did that day. It was drop the kid off at nursery, go see the film. Oh my God, it's time to pick her up at the nursery. I was like, what? But where did the time go?
Yeah, I actually had 10 days off work, and normally that would be, I'd be able to do everything I possibly could, but I had a poorly person in the house, and so basically I didn't do anything but looking after a poorly person.
Yeah, but it's one of those things. It tells you, okay, well, obviously we talk about Netflix versus cinema, and every now and then we get a little bit philosophical about this whole thing that our show is named after. And it's one of the things that is a plus in the Netflix column. I can watch it at 3 o'clock in the morning. No big deal. Is that when I have the time? I can do it. But it tells you how much cinema brings an extra something, that we're willing to put up with all this inconvenience, especially as films keep getting longer and longer. Like The Eternals is 2.5 hours long. Why? But we put up with it. But anyway, The Eternals. If nobody knows anything about this, or anybody,
I know nothing about it.
You know nothing about this. Okay, so the Eternals was written by it's a legendary comic book writer called Jack Kirby, who is in very many circles he is credited as the co-creator of Spider-Man, even though Stan Lee took all the credit for that because Stan Lee was a big media whore, quite frankly. It's the only word I could think of. I'm sorry. Jack Kirby is like he co-created Spider-Man, and so he did a lot of stuff. And Eternals is where he went a little bit bigger and decided to start thinking about philosophical ideas and went a little bit out there. Quite frankly, he is the guy who did Doctor Strange and a lot of the more psychedelic stuff in Doctor Strange. And the fact that Marvel have finally come to the point where they're like, you know what, we're going to do the Eternals. We're going to do a film of the Eternals. Tells you how confident they are getting, because they are beginning to get to the point where they're like, we've done enough, people are willing to accept stuff from us, we're going to go for some of the more out there things. We're going to go for some of the more out. So this is the first Marvel movie. It starts off with a crawl, a bit like Star Wars, to explain what the heck is happening before it actually kicks on. And there's all this sort of like mythology in it about a group called the Celestials, who created a group called the Deviants and created another group called the Eternals. And the Eternals were sent to Earth to fight the Deviants because the Deviants were to protect the people of Earth. And then you get to meet the Eternals. They're pretty much, if you think like the Avengers, they're like that. But they're like the Avengers, but alien. And they're sent to Earth. They look like humans, but they all have different powers. This one can fly and shoot beams out of his eyes. That one can transform things from this material to that material. This one can do illusions. That one's really fast. That one can control minds. This one's really good at making things mechanically. So I actually lost count of how many Eternals they are, but it's somewhere in the region of 8. It's somewhere in the region of 8, and the cast is quite eclectic. You have from Salma Hayek to Angelina Jolie to Gemma Chan to Richard Madden to Barry Keogh. It's quite a wide range of people. I mean, and this film has been a lot said about the representation that you see in this film, like the fact that one of the Eternals is deaf. The fact that the Eternals are not just a whole bunch of white men, for instance. The fact that the leader of the Eternals is Salma Hayek, played a character called Ajak. And they arrive on Earth in 5000 BC. So they've been on Earth a long time. 5000 BC, they show up and they start fighting the Deviants. And you see throughout history, different points of history, how they have sometimes influenced some fairy tales in different cultures, and how they've like the
Greek myths or the Nephilim and that sort of thing.
Let's put it this way: one of them is called Icarus.
Okay.
Yeah, one of them is called Icarus, and there's bits where they sort of hint at the fact that it's like, yeah, somebody else made up that story when we were in Athens in that time and all that, and that he was the source of the legend. So they have this whole thing where the Eternals have been around for ages, and they've been on Earth and they had this mission, and every now and then one of them sort of communicates with the Celestial who created them and sent them to Earth for this mission. And then as the film goes on, it might get a bit spoilerific to say how this thing sort of like goes out, but years ago they thought they completed the mission and they split up. They went off to different corners of the Earth. And the first bit of the film is kind of like, oh, we've got to get the band back together, because you have this one's in London and that one is in South Dakota, and this person's in India and has become a Bollywood star, and this person is, and you have all these, and there's a you know how much I love the Blues Brothers. I know how much I always go on about the Blues Brothers. There's a very sort of Blues Brothers thing where they sort of getting the band back together, where they have to go in there and say, we need you to we need to come on board, and people have come on, and so that bit I actually really, really liked. I like the fact that you seen them coming together. I like the fact that there was this idea of them being this sort of weird family coming back together. And this film has gotten a lot of stick and a lot of abuse and a lot of bad reviews. And I've got to be honest, I don't see why. I don't see why the reviews they're saying, oh, it's lackluster, blah, 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 blah. I thought it was actually really, really good. I thought for a superhero movie trying to grapple with big ideas and going over, because the time span of this film is 7,000 years. And going over a time span of 7,000 years, I thought that they did quite well. Obviously, it is a superhero movie, so there has to be a bit where everybody gets together and fights some big bad. The film's a bit confused as to who its big bad is, and I think it tries to do a bait and switch where it tries to go, oh, these are the bad guys, these are the bad guys, these are the bad guys. Oh no, okay, now, oh no, those are the bad guys. But we started saying that those are the bad guys, so we got to wrap that up in some way. So you guys go deal with those bad guys. You guys go, and that bit is not done that well. It's really, really not done that well. But all in all, I really, really like this. I thought it was good. I thought it was a good addition to the Marvel sort of cinematic universe, and it's opened up the cosmic sector of what the hell are they going to do next. And this is one of those moments where, as much as I'm a Marvel fan, I get a bit worried, because I'm like, it could go quite nebulous, it could go huge, it could go wide, and therefore it could become unwieldy, start to eat itself,
and then just implode in on itself, or disappear up its own backside, because it's too unwieldy, and they're trying to do the multiverse thing, and that really, really, really makes me nervous. But for this, I thought it was a good film. I would give it a 3 out of 5, because I think they have the whole thing of trying to introduce you to a whole new bunch of characters, and there's a whole and it's a bit of an origin story, quite frankly. There's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
How important is it to be up to speed in the Marvel world? Because as you say, it is constantly expanding.
Yeah.
Whereas once it was like there was one film every couple of years, and you can more or less keep up with it. Now you've got this mini series coming out. You've got the Disney Plus, the sort of unique bits that they've brought in. You've got all this stuff, and then you've also got the other films like the Shang-Chi film.
Oh yeah, Shang-Chi.
And you think, I haven't seen all of the Disney Plus series, and I missed the last couple of films. So I'm wondering, am I getting out of the loop more, or do I need to do my homework before I can see this film?
I was surprised. This is really standalone. Like, cool. you could go to this film and not watch any of the other Marvel films, and apart from a reference here and there to Thanos, or
in the trailer I saw that they referenced Thanos.
Yeah, or a bit where they talk about Iron Man and Captain America, and a bit where they talk about 5 years ago where half the population disappeared. That's it. You could watch this film and not watch any other Marvel film. I was really surprised at how standalone it was.
Reassuring.
Yeah, I was surprised.
Sometimes when I see a new film coming out, I'm thinking, oh, but I don't think I've seen the last one yet, or the last series, and I don't think I've seen all of the end credits bits for all of the last things. So...
it's actually quite funny. I have a friend, Madisha Duckworth, and we're on a WhatsApp group, and somebody was talking about whether they should go see Eternals. This was before I saw it, and so they went to see Eternals. They went to see Eternals, and the other one was like, "What? But what? They're still making Marvel movies?" And I was like, "Yeah," and I showed her a slate of all the movies that are coming out over the next couple of years, and she was like, "But I took 2 weeks off to catch up." She'd taken 2 weeks off to catch up all the way up to Endgame because she thought that was the end. And she's like, I'm never gonna catch up.
No. Well, I still haven't seen all of the previous. I haven't seen all of the Iron Man films.
Oh yeah.
And I think I've seen most of the others, and I haven't seen all the Hulk films either. So I missed a few, but I sort of managed to
Yeah. There's some of them. The Hulk films you can skip. Nothing interconnected really happens in those. But but this one is, there might be stuff going forward, but it is really, really not really connected. And that's a big part of the Eternals, is the fact that they were ordered, because a big part of the sort of philosophical questions is, someone even asks them, hang on a second, if you guys are Eternals, and if you guys have been on Earth this whole time, why didn't you get involved when that happened? And why didn't you get involved when that happened? And why didn't you get involved? And they were ordered to not get involved. Almost kind of like, when a scientist goes to a place and don't interfere. It's like, unless it has to do with this, don't interfere. And they were ordered to not do that. And that's why they say...
sounds like the Prime Directive.
Yeah, and I quite like what they do with their version of the Prime Directive in this film. And I quite like what they do with it. It's one thing that you look at the end and you go, that tracks. That makes sense. And it's one of the films where the sort of big end of the world event is tied in quite well with the story, and it sort of like goes back to the beginning, and so you can go, oh wow, Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's what was going on from the very beginning. So it's, and I quite liked it. There's some bits where it goes a bit sort of comic book movie, and it's like, well, we do that. Why? Because reasons. Why did that happen then? How come you can suddenly do that and you couldn't do it before? Well, I'm surprised myself, but we're not going to explain it. So, so it's. And obviously, there's a big deal made about the fact that it's directed by Chloe Zhao, who directed Nomadland, and so she is the current best director from the Oscars. And yeah, but I feel like when you go to a superhero movie, there's only so much that you can notice the director on. Although there are some bits, especially when it comes to interpersonal relationships of the Eternals, that I think I can see her hand on. It's a bit more focused on the interpersonal relationships of the Eternals and how they become this weird little family than maybe some other films might be. But anyway, I have said enough about that. I think I've gone on for way longer than my 5 minutes on that. But Eternals, 3 out of 5. Don't believe the reviews. Go make up your own mind is what I would say. Go watch it. Yeah, don't believe the reviews, including this one. go make up your own mind. Okay, so now we're gonna go over, as we usually do. We a couple of things in cinema, a couple of things at home. We're gonna go over to Disney Plus now. We're gonna talk about Why the Last Man, which Sharon, you have finally finished watching, and I own the graphic novel for this. I love it. It's one of my favorite graphic novels. I think it's one of the best graphic novels that's been written. So you just want to tell us a little bit about Why the Last Man is and what you thought about this show.
Yeah, I came to it without having any prior knowledge. Why the Last Man is a 10-episode first season. I gather there's probably going to be more on Disney Plus, and an event. We don't know why or what the event was, but suddenly on one day, all the men in the world, all the male species of every subspecies and species, as well as humans, all the men died. They started hemorrhaging, bleeding, choking, dying, without warning and without any trigger. And then this leaves a world, one, depleted by half its population, and then almost entirely populated by women. But amongst all this chaos, there is one man and one monkey that seemingly, through no act of their own, through no conscious thing that they've done any different to anyone else, they survive. And then you see the story as it unfolds over these 10 episodes is, what does the last man on Earth do? Yeah. It happens that he is the son of the member of Congress, and in the whole designated survivor type thing, because all of her male colleagues have predeceased her. Yeah. She becomes, through a process of all the more senior members of the cabinet have died, she becomes president. Yes. And she has to sort of navigate her way through, one, what's to do with her, when she finds out that her son is living, what to do with her, the last man on Earth, seemingly the last man on Earth. Yeah. How to navigate, how to keep a country running when half of its population have gone. And as they say in one point of the film, that in the boardrooms around the world and in the boardrooms around the country, there aren't that many women sitting on the boards. Yeah. So when suddenly you lose all the men, you may find there's only one person who can run a nuclear power station. Yeah. Is a junior executive. There isn't anyone who has been given any power in that organization left to run it. And so you see this across the world, where before women were underrepresented, suddenly there's no one who to pick up the pieces of these things. Yeah, and then sort of gender politics comes into play. In a world without men, would it suddenly become all lovely and peaceful, and would it be, all sisters together, or would you then start to see the fractures within the sisterhood, as it were? Like if someone is a trans man, but they haven't got that Y chromosome, they're still alive, they're men, because they know they've transitioned, but the women are saying, well, you're not a real man because you used to be a woman, so you're not a real man, that's why you're still alive. Yeah. And so you've got this gender politics, you've got a lot of actually things that are quite current in our world are examined in a different way through this drama. Yeah. So you see there's loads of threads going through the series, as you would imagine, so I'm not going to pick up on all of them, but you see these threads that are quite topical running through it, as if to say, what would a world be like without men, and what would the world be like if you were the last one on there?
You see. Now this thing, Sharon. You are making me just that synopsis is making me want to. It's making me want to go read the book, read the novel again, because I loved that whole thing about it. I loved that, like essentially what you just said, that if you got rid of all the men, what next? What happens next? And I love the fact that anyway. This is not a review of the graphic novels, a review of the TV show. So, what did you think of the TV show?
Yeah, I found it. I was intrigued by it in some ways. I thought that they kept me gripped because I read some apocalyptic fiction, so it appealed to me in that sense. Though you want to think, what is there if you limit half of the species on the planet? Is there a future? Can you have a future beyond the generation that now lives?
Yeah.
Essentially, there isn't going to be any more children.
Yeah.
Or unless, people suddenly, because even women who are pregnant with male sort of fetuses, they sort of miscarry.
Yeah.
So it was, there's that sort of an avenue to explore. So it was interesting. There were intriguing premises there. I found it the characters were played quite sympathetically. Even some of the ghastlier ones, you think, okay, you get to understand them. They're not all just, there's many sort of nuances and shades of grey.
Yes.
No one's all good, no one's all bad. There isn't like the old, to use a literary sort of thing, the sort of the virgin whore dichotomy. There isn't that. There's women are nuanced. So there aren't like, you're like a good woman and you're like a bad woman. They're like womanhood and all its sort of shades.
Yes.
So I found it interesting. So I would say I probably found it interesting more than I loved it.
Yeah.
So I would certainly say it's competently made. It's well played. All the actors do their job. There's plenty to intrigue you where you think, yeah, that really is an interesting sort of moral question. So cutting all that down to what I would rate it as, I don't know, but like a strong but I'm still going to have to go a strong 3, I think.
All right, strong.
I think it's edging towards a 4. My only sort of queries is it's quite brutal in places. There's violence in it. There's quite a lot of it's quite sweary, so it's quite adult in its content. And so, if that's sort of my own personal thing. So I would say, to me, it's a strong 3, but I wouldn't quite go as far as a 4 for me personally. But it was certainly worth a watch.
All right, good stuff. I might actually pick that up, read that. But I'm going to be like, I'm going to go watch it. I'm going to be like, hang on a second, that wasn't in the novel. You've changed the text. You've changed the sacred text. And it's like what? Yorick ampersand doesn't sound like that. Like that. Yeah, but it's done.
Yeah, there's an interesting twist, though, isn't it? Why the last man? It represents like the Y chromosome.
Yes.
And also the last man, his name is Yorick.
It's Yorick,
so
yeah. They did that.
Name begins with a Y.
Yeah, they did that. They did that totally on purpose. But it's. Okay, see now, I want to sort of like delve into it and start going, how about this bit? Did they do this bit? Did they do that bit? What bit does it end? Did that happen? And I really, really, really like the graphic novel. But okay, we go back to cinemas now. We'll hopefully by the time we've done this, we've spoken to Shaun and we've put his stuff in. But if we haven't, hey, it's just us. So you went to the cinema and you managed to see C.S. Lewis, some subtitle.
A Most Reluctant Convert.
All right, cool. So this was in the cinema. Is there
I think it's not had a general release. It was just one of those. It was only shown once on Sunday afternoon.
All right.
And it was only one of the small screens. So I think they were like, and it's a Christian film.
What was it by any chance organized by a church?
I don't think the screening was. I think that it's across the country, but they were doing this one day across the country, across the cinemas all over the place, just having this one showing on the Sunday afternoon. And it was like a double feature in that they did the making of the film and then you see the film.
All right. Oh, okay.
And it's based on a book, based on a stage play.
Oh,
and
wow.
So basically you see C.S. Lewis narrating his own life. So you see an older C.S. Lewis looking back on his childhood, his youth, his experience in the First World War, and then his conversion to Christianity, and how for him that was like the pivotal moment in his life.
Yes,
was his conversion to Christianity. that he had abandoned any sort of religious belief as a child when his mother died, and he spent his adolescence and his youth and into his 20s having no regard for religion other than to dismiss it, basically.
Yeah.
And it was only when he was a fellow at Cambridge University, or was he Oxford? He was Oxford.
I can never remember. I think he was Oxford. I think Tolkien was Cambridge. Oh, no.
They were both together.
No. It was Oxford. They were both in Oxford, yeah.
Yes. So it was only when basically he made friends with Tolkien and there was another scholar of a similar ilk who were both committed Christians that they basically convinced him of the rightness of what they believed, and he became convinced himself. So it is the story of his conversion to Christianity, and he described himself that there never was a more miserable, reluctant convert in the history of Christianity, because intellectually it was almost like a case for Christ, but this was his own version of that, where he basically got to the point where he couldn't deny the gospel. And so he accepted it, but he said he was sweating and pacing, and he was the most reluctant man ever to accept his fate, sort of in Christendom. And then when he did obviously embrace that Christianity, it literally did transform his life and his work, and it sort of fueled his sort of creativity, because he wrote his, the Narnia Chronicles and things like Mere Christianity that he wrote. He wrote The Case of the Boy,
Screwtape Letters.
And there's his science fiction trilogy. So his creative output was entirely shaped by this conversion when he was just short of just before his 30s.
Oh, so okay, now so Sharon, you and I are both Christians. We both identify as that. I think that's a good parlance to use nowadays. We identify as Christians, but personally speaking, there's a certain type of Christian media output that I would look at and say that is just straight up propaganda.
You look at it and you go, nope.
Yeah. You look at that and you go, oh, for goodness sake, this is not going to make anybody even think that you're a reasonable person to talk to. It's just gonna be like, it just comes across as, yes, thump it, and yes, look how great we are. Why aren't you believing what we believe? Where does this fall down? Does this fall down on the propaganda side of things, or on this is a human being whose life we're telling?
In some ways, I think Christians will appreciate this film more than anyone outside of the faith, outside of the church. I can't see it being a crossover film. It's quite dry, and it is almost quite intellectual, the way C.S. Lewis was himself. Yeah. So I think most people who are fans of C.S. Lewis are probably from the church community. So, and the way it was presented was quite dry. It wasn't, even though it was like he was narrating his life and you see it sort of dramatically played out, it's still, because you had that device of he was narrating it, he was like a spectator on those events. Yeah. So we too were a spectator on those events, and you didn't really feel drawn into them. Oh yeah. You were also he was stood back watching these things, and so we were stood back watching these things. So the device to tell the story separated us from it to a certain degree. So I think I can't see this film appealing to a mass audience. When I looked around, because the church communities around the place, even cross-denominational, we know each other. Yeah. And looking around the church, I recognised people from other churches. So it really was like a Christian film for Christians, and I really would struggle to see, even though it was very well done, and it makes you think what a towering intellect C.S. Lewis had. He wasn't, when people say, oh, you have to be sort of slightly simple, or you have to be slightly naive, or you have to be slightly, intellectually lacking to embrace Christianity, because it sort of appeals to the different things in us. Yeah. And you think, well, actually, you can't describe C.S. Lewis as any of those things, nor could you describe J.R.R. Tolkien as any of those things. These were intellectuals who are not just intelligent. They had these strong, analytical, insightful intellects, and if they could have found any flaw in it, they would have done. And they would have abandoned it as I cannot countenance believing in something that's utter nonsense. So yeah,
okay. So if you're putting your critical eye on, and the way you would look at this is, how many stars would you give it?
I would give it a 3. a solid 3. I couldn't say it was a strong 3. It was a solid 3, this one, because, you know, it appealed to me because I quite like that sort of analytical looking at that sort of that dispassionate look at things sometimes.
Yeah.
But then it also made me realize that I wasn't emotionally connecting with the story.
Yeah.
So I would say it was 3. So I found it really interesting, but not emotionally engaging.
All right, cool. Good stuff. Right, we have one more thing to do, but we have about a minute left. So log on, log back on, log off, and log back on.
Yes.
All right, cool. See you in a second.
Okay.
So, we now go on to the final thing that, it might be the final thing. It depends on whether we get Shaun on this or not. This might be the final thing you hear about this week. If not, if we're to actually speak to Shaun, you will hear some other stuff as well. So, this is What If, because I decided to be a total cliche parody of myself and become the Marvel correspondent for the week. I got to see Turtles. Let's see, so you're talking about all this interconnected stuff that they're doing between TV and film and all that. So I was like, we saw something in cinemas with Eternals, and I'm going to see some Marvel stuff at home with What If, ... So, What If is, what it says in the day, is essentially it's a series of alternate takes on Marvel stories. So you have things like, what if Peggy Carter took the super soldier serum instead of Steve Rogers? So you actually, instead of having a Captain America, you essentially have a Captain Carter who's Britain and has, like, you know, a Union Jack on her shield and all that. It's a whole bunch of different things, some of which I think are intriguing and some of which I think are kind of like, whoever thought that? So, for instance, like, what if Captain Carter took the serum? I'm like, yes, I'm down with that. I can get behind why that. But it's like, what if T'Challa became Star-Lord? So if T'Challa from Black Panther was taken from Earth and became the leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and I'm like, I never thought that. Never thought that for 1 second. I'm like, it's like, why did you come up with that? And so there's some of them there's one of them which is like, what if Thor was an only son? And sometimes the title of the episode doesn't really tell you what happens in the episode. Like, what if Thor was an only son? So obviously the idea being that Loki never showed up on the scene. But the funny thing about that episode is that half an hour episode ends up being a better, more affecting take on the Thor story than the film Thor itself. which I think for me, it just highlights to you how much more confident Marvel have gotten over the last 10 years as they've been building this thing, and they've known how to tell these stories, and they've known what people will take, because the first Thor movie, the first movie of any one of these characters, I think is usually quite tentative. It's quite kind of, let's just step gently here, let's not go for anything, let's just swing for the fences, let's see if people will like it. But then as things went along, usually by the third film of the third Captain America, the third Iron Man, the third Thor, they're going, okay, cool, now we're going to swing for the fences, we know what people can take. By the time you get to Endgame, and I think What If is really, each episode starts off with a character called Uatu, voiced by Jeffrey Wright, who tells you that he's the Watcher, and he watches all the possibilities that could happen. So this happens here. It's like, what if Tony Stark at the beginning of Iron Man in Afghanistan, Tony Stark was never injured and never taken into a cave. What if he was saved by Killmonger, the bad guy from Black Panther? What if he was saved? What would have happened then? So you would never have had an Iron Man, and how would that have gone on? And how would the world have looked different? And some of them, I think most of them are actually really, really well done. One of them that I did not expect to be as affecting as it was the Doctor Strange one. Is what if Doctor Strange lost his? It says, what if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands? So, in the Doctor Strange movie, he's a surgeon. He crashes. He has nerve damage, so he can't perform surgery anymore. And that's what sends him off on his quest to. But in this one, it's changed slightly, and it's what it does to him and how he kind of becomes obsessed with trying to bring somebody back to life and what it does. And that was actually a really, really effective story that I did not expect coming. There's another one of What If Ultron won? So obviously the Age of Ultron. And the thing is that it goes through all these separate realities, just going, okay, what happens here? What happens here? And this is Marvel beginning to delve into the multiverse, saying these are all these different realities, all these different things that could happen. some of them are a little bit of a fun aside, and you're like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. Some of them seem to go a little bit more serious. But by the time it gets to the end, you see what they're actually trying to do. And the final episode of What If brings all of these strands together and says all these different what ifs. This is where they lead to this one big thing, and it actually sets up some stuff for that. There's possibilities because, as I said, I'm getting a bit worried about where Marvel is going next because it's infinite. There's loads of different ways they could go. It could eat itself. It could blow up. And so it worries me slightly because they could do anything from here. But I guess that's also kind of the excitement about it, is that they could do anything from here. And how they go about it and how they decide to take this whole thing about the new opportunities that they have will determine whether Marvel continues this run that it's been on, or will determine whether it's falls flat on its face and whether this is where it all ends and we go, well, that was an amazing run that has never been seen before in the history of cinema. Thank you for that, Kevin Feige, but it's over now. So it's yeah. But so the TV show itself, I think, just going through some of the different possibilities of what could have happened, it recreates some shots because it's all animated. It recreates some shots, almost shot for shot from the films, to say, oh, imagine this scene, but with something changed. That scene, but with something changed. And well, being a Marvel fan, I really, really liked it. But I think that they also did quite good. They made good use of them alternative reality thing to examine some things that possibly they would not have been able to do it on a big screen, or might have been prohibitively expensive, and might have been too risky because they don't know if anybody would have gone for it. So yeah. They even have one. It's like, what if zombies? So what if there's a zombie plague that takes over the Marvel world, and pretty much half the superheroes become zombies? What do you do then? But anyway, I'll stop talking. But all in all, I would give it just about a 4. Just about a 4. There are some episodes that are better than others, some episodes which are higher quality than others, some episodes which hold your attention more than others. But all in all, I would give this series a 4.
Okay.
Any questions on that, Sharon? I know it's animated and you might not. For that, you might avoid it forever. But any questions you have about What If?
I quite like speculative sort of things, so it's interesting. I mean, I don't know if I could tolerate the whole series, but there might be ones I think I might actually be able to sit through an hour of animation for that.
Or an hour a week. Okay. So let's give you.
I don't think I do an hour a week.
All right, cool. Let's go through it. What if Captain Carter were the first Avenger? What if
that one sounds intriguing? Yeah,
that one is definitely intriguing. What if T'Challa became a Star-Lord? I think it's a rubbish title, but they actually do quite. There's some really okay. So there's the actor Jimon. I'm not sure whether it's pronounced Jimon or Jaimon Honsu.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, Honsu. Yeah, and so he plays a character called Korath. Korath the Abuser or something like that. And he's shown up in Captain Marvel, and he's shown up in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes, I remember him from Guardians.
And you have him there, but he doesn't really do anything in those films. Like he just sort of stands there being imposing and then gets dispatched. And in the What If T'Challa became a Star-Lord, if for no other reason, for the fact they bring Jaimon Hunsu back to voice this character, and his reaction every time he's around T'Challa is hilarious. He just totally fanboys all over him. He's like, "Oh my God, it's Star-Lord! I can't believe it's you!" It's like, and I think for that alone, from what I thought was a rubbish title, for that alone, I was like, yes, this is worth it. What if the world lost its mightiest heroes? So this is essentially, it's kind of like almost like a slasher movie where somebody's going off and picking off the Avengers one by one, and they're trying to figure out who's doing it, why they're doing it, and how they're doing it.
Is it to interject? Sorry for a moment. Is it the same style throughout, or is it they have a different sort of animated style for each episode?
It's the same animated style throughout. So
it's the same throughout. Okay.
Yeah, it looks the same. It looks the same. What if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands? And said, what if zombies? That's just the title of the episode. What if zombies? What if Killmonger rescued Tony Stark? What if Thor were an only child? I actually mentioned most of these. What if Ultron won? So essentially, what if Ultron at the end of Age of Ultron actually managed to do what he wanted to do and get rid of that? That is a dystopian. that is massively dystopian. It's actually really upsetting. It's really upsetting. And then the final one, what if the Watcher broke his oath?
Oh.
So 9 episodes. So I would say, but if I was going to tell you one to watch, I would say Captain Carter, the first episode. What if Captain Carter were the first Avenger?
Yeah.
I would say watch that one, because I think that one, it manages to, because if you remember the end of the first Captain American movie, and I think Captain America, Marvel are really good at ending the movies on like the last line of the movies is usually spot on. And I think the Captain America, the First Avengers, has one of the most affecting last lines, where Captain America wakes up in the present day, realizes that he's been asleep for 70 years, and Nick Fury goes, "Captain, are you okay?" And he goes, "It's okay, I had a date." And it just ends on his face. With him realizing everything he's lost, and he just says, "I had a date." And I don't know why, but that line kind of like just gets me. It just gets me every time. And Captain Carter with the First Avenger manages to recreate, without doing that line, manages to recreate that kind of feeling again in a half an hour. Some of these are masterful. I think the What If Thor were an only child is really funny. And funnily enough, What If Thor was an only child, it has a more believable love story between Thor and Jane. Yeah, Jane. What's her last name? I can't remember. It's not Jane Porter. No, that's Natalie Portman who plays her. Anyway, it has a more believable story between Thor and Jane than the film Thor does. Because I remember watching the film Thor and going, "Where the heck did that come from? You didn't build that up whatsoever." But the animated version, in half an hour, you're like, "I totally get this. I totally believe that these two." It's like a crazy, crazy bender. But anyway, but that's it. 4 stars for What If. So we'll see what Shaun says, and that might change the scores. But so far, who do you think won this week, Sharon? Who do you think?
Home viewing won this week.
Yes,
it's a home viewing by 1 point.
Home viewing,
3 and a 4 and a 3 and a 3.
Yes, home viewing won this week. So this week we're saying the best place that our money was spent was Netflix, even though we just about made it to the cinema by the skin of our teeth. Yes. So until next time, it's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye for me.
And we shall be seeing, I think my aim is to see Ghostbusters Afterlife for next week.
You'll try to get to the cinema this week. It all depends on the poorly person in the house.
Yeah.
So hopefully I will get there.
And I might even manage to see Last Night in Soho and give you guys a review of
what that'd be good.
I've been trying to see it, but it's down to one showing now.
Oh.
One showing at like 9 p.m., which might work if I pick the right day. But anyway, till next week, goodbye.
Adios.